little bit. I have assignments due tonight, so it's going to be really fun. Anyway, so I'm talking to you guys about faith. I love to talk about faith because it's something that I struggle with every single second of every single day. And I think that a lot of us struggle with faith. So first thing, also, I usually type my things out, but I wrote this one, and I really can't read my own handwriting. So I might just go off on a tangent, just when I say faith at the end, that's what you know it wasn't about. Okay. So God asked us to have faith, and some things are kind of difficult to have faith in, right? So I'm just speaking from my own experience, but sometimes I read things in the Bible, and I'm like, how was that possible? How in the world did that happen? Or I think, I would never be able to step out and, I don't know, build an ark, or step out onto water, to walk on water to Jesus. I'm like, do not have that kind of faith. I don't think I could do it. But I think that we, myself included, are missing a step in there somewhere. And that's what I want to talk about today. So when I read some of the quote-unquote big stories of the Bible, you know, the stories that you teach the 2-year-olds in nursery, you know, you hit the big stories, I feel kind of down about myself and about my own faith, because, man, those guys had some faith, right? But a lot of that is because I'm focused on the end of their story and not the beginning of their story. So, or even the middle of their story. When we start out in our faith, or even just when we decide that we're going to push our faith to the next level, when we decide we're finally going to step out in faith, we don't usually step straight out into the ocean to walk on water. Maybe you do. Some people probably do. But personally, I think you need to have at least a foundation of faith before you can step out and do something like that. And if you think about it, Peter didn't immediately step out into that either, did he? Jesus didn't call him one day and the next day he was walking on water. That didn't happen. Peter's faith grew because he saw Jesus performing miracles, and he watched amazing things happen, and through every single one of those situations, his faith was tested, and Jesus' power was proven, and his faith grew, and it was continuously growing. Peter had a groundwork of faith when he stepped onto the water. So he had his faith already set. He had faith that was already growing before he stepped out. I think a lot of times we just expect to have the kind of faith that Jesus' disciples had after he was crucified, you know, like when they went to all different parts of the earth and they stopped at nothing to preach the gospel, and they almost all lost their lives preaching the gospel. That's a lot of faith. And I think we can kind of get discouraged, or at least I can, reading that and thinking, there's no way. Like, I could never have that much faith. We want to have the kind of power and be like those big stories we always read about. And the Bible tells us that that's possible, right? Like, it's very possible. We can have that power. We can do those things. We can be like those people in the big stories. The problem is we don't want to start from where we are right now. For myself, that's because starting from where I'm at in my faith is different from dreaming about where I could possibly be in the future. So starting something is different than thinking about it, or planning it, or dreaming about it. Looking at myself and my level of faith right now, evaluating that for myself makes it a real thing. So that means I actually have to do something rather than just stay dreaming about it. I'm a daydreamer, always. So I'm always looking forward to who I maybe could possibly be one day, but I almost always avoid looking at who I am right now and where I'm at right now. Looking at your own reflection with criticism can be terrifying, can be scary. It's bad when someone else is critical of you, of me, I hate it, but it's almost worse when you're really critical of yourself, because you can separate yourself from situations where other people are critical of you, but if you're critical of yourself, I mean, you're always there, right? You can't, I can't separate from myself. I don't know about you guys. I'm always so critical of everything I do, though, like what I say and how and how I walk, or am I giving too much eye contact, or did I look away too often? Do they think I didn't listen? Did that sound really stupid? Did I overshare? Oh my goodness, I just had a 30-minute conversation. I have no idea what I said. I bet I sounded stupid. You know, simple things like that. Every single day, that's what I do. Every day, I'm so critical of myself all the time. Thank you, Dean. But that kind of criticism isn't always constructive, and it isn't always good, and sometimes it can even be detrimental. So sometimes if you're always critical of yourself, or you're always down on yourself, maybe you won't try it next time. Right. Maybe you won't want to do something new because you think, well, I'm going to be bad at it anyway. Or, you know, it can be really harmful for yourself. We're supposed to search within ourselves, always, to see where we are in our walk with God. And whether we know it or not, we're always checking in with ourselves about everything. So we're always checking in with ourselves about our relationships, our needs. Am I hungry? You know, could I go for a Diet Dr. Pepper, right? Our emotions. How did I feel today? Personally, this is off topic, but I watched Anastasia on Saturday, and I cannot stop listening to the songs. And with the songs, I get a lot of really good emotions. So I'm always checking in with myself when I'm listening to a song. I'm like, this is so good. But anyway, so you're always checking in. You're always checking in on your emotions. Maybe a little bit too much sometimes. But we should do the same with our faith. Our faith should be another one of those things that every single day we're saying, okay, did I have enough to eat today? Am I being healthy today? Have I exercised enough today? Did I have enough water? Have I checked in on my faith? Did I test my faith today? Did I trust God today for anything? Our faith should be something that we think about like that every single day. When's the last time I relied on faith for anything? Did I put my faith in myself today, or did I put it in God today? These questions keep us accountable, right? Because it's easy to rely on people rather than on God. And before you know it, if you're not checking yourself, then you've gone days, weeks, months, years without ever stepping out in your faith, without ever relying on God for anything. Right. And that's not what we're supposed to do, is it? Yeah. Sometimes you don't even know it until you check in with yourself. Sometimes you genuinely don't know. It's not like you set out and say, I'm purposely not going to put my faith in God today. I'm not going to step out in faith today. But sometimes we get really comfortable, right? I mean, once you've been at your job for a while, you know what you're doing. You don't really need to lean on anybody to help you with your job, right? You can kind of get through it. You get into a routine every single day, you know, and before you know it, if you're not checking with yourself, you've kind of gotten stagnant in your faith. And it happens to all of us. It's not like we set out to do this. It's just what happens, and it's why we need to check. However, these situations are what make our faith grow in the first place. So when something comes along and tests our faith, and we rely on God and it grows, then we're more prepared for the next time. So these little things that come along, when we step out in faith and we rely on God, our faith is growing every time. And we're a little bit more prepared for the next thing that comes along. Because we kind of know what to expect. Maybe not the situation, but we kind of know what to expect from God, from giving it to God, because we've done it before. So it's kind of like, you know, practice makes perfect. You got to practice your faith. I mean, some people go through something huge, and they step out in faith and everything works out, but that doesn't mean that their faith is set for the rest of forever.
Right.
You still have to practice it. It's something that you're not just, some people are really good, and it's easier for them to have faith in things. They're not as controlling over their own lives. But it's not natural for any of us to say, I'm going to give up control of everything that I'm doing to God when we don't know what's going to happen. It's just not natural. So it's something that we have to practice. When our faith is tested, that's when we really find out who we're relying on.
Yeah.
So maybe you've gotten into your groove. You are not really checking in on your faith. I mean, you're going to church, you're reading your Bible, doing all that stuff, but you haven't really asked yourself, those questions in a while, and then something happens. Maybe you lose your job. Maybe your car breaks down or something. When things like that happen and you have no control over it, that's when you find out who you've been relying on. Because you can either crumble, because if you're relying on yourself, it's not gonna be pretty. But if you're relying on God, if you're constantly checking yourself, then you're gonna be able to get through it. And things like that really shine a light on your heart and what's going on inside of you, no matter if you've been checking yourself or not. That's why if you keep checking yourself, then when those things come along, you're gonna be like, oh, got it, whatever, God's got it, and then your faith's just gonna keep growing. Without being tested, and without us stepping out with Jesus, our faith is stagnant. It's still, it's not moving, it's not growing, and maybe sometimes it even goes down. We can't grow that way. In fact, if your faith is tested, or you step out into faith once, and then never again, like until 50 years later, or until the next big thing happens, does that experience really help your foundation be stronger? I mean, I don't know. Maybe. But we don't have to just jump into it. We don't have to just dive headfirst into the water and say, I'm going to walk on water with Jesus the day after we get saved. That's probably not the best way to step out in your faith. I mean, I'm sure some people do it. Some people like to take chances. It's not me. God has trusted all of us with something.
Right.
Whatever that something may be, could be a talent you have, or maybe a dream you have, an aspiration you have. Whatever that is, that's what we're supposed to use for God. Maybe, okay, so I used this example, and I don't know if it's going to be a good example, because I read it and I was like, this sounds so weird. Anyway, I'm going to read it. So, just a little preface. So maybe you're like the best at vacuuming floors. You always get all the little pieces, like those little white pieces, like there are two right there. You get all the little pieces. You're the best at vacuuming floors ever. You volunteer, you're like, I want to work for God, but I'm new to this church, I just got saved, I want to do something. I'm going to volunteer to vacuum floors. Okay, so you volunteer to vacuum the floors of the church, and everyone that comes in is like, wow, these floors, man. These floors are so nice. When you stepped out to do something simple, like vacuuming floors, right? You made a commitment, you followed through your commitment, and you're doing what you're supposed to do. God already starts opening doors.
Right.
Okay? Yeah. So maybe you started out vacuuming floors, you're really good at that, but you're also a really good guitar player. And maybe one day someone approaches you and says, hey, would you like to play guitar with us, on Sunday night, just to see if you like it, to test it out, see what happens. And then you go from vacuuming floors to playing guitar. And then maybe the worship leader leaves after a couple of years, and you're the only person that can step up and take their place, and you went from vacuuming floors to leading worship. All because you used something that God gave you.
Right.
In this case, dedication, hard work, and a talent for vacuuming, And you used it for the church and for God. So you took what God gave you, you took those talents, because hard work and dedication, that's a talent.
Amen.
Yeah.
Coming into your job every day excited and happy and ready to work and willing to do anything, even if it's vacuuming floors, that's important, guys. Can you imagine what these floors would look like if no one ever vacuumed them? I do not want to know. But when you use those talents for God, He opens doors for you.
Yes.
And even things like that grow your faith constantly. You don't have to be the best at something to do your best, but everything has something they're good at, and everyone has something that they're supposed to do for God.
Yeah.
Everyone has something that God has given you that you can use for Him. All God asks of us is that we use what He's given to us. And sometimes that's hard. Sometimes it's really hard to step out and say, I'm going to volunteer for something, or I'm going to ride in the van, I'm going to help pick up kids. And then maybe you go from picking up kids to years later you're the youth leader. when you step out for God in faith, using the things that God has given you, He's going to open doors for you. And those things grow your faith. So, settle that to say this. Again, I could read all of my handwriting, so I didn't need help. But anyway, so we need to check with ourselves every single day. We need to check our faith every day. Have we tested our faith? Who are we trusting? Are we leaning on ourselves, or are we leaning on God?
Right.
And that needs to be something that we look into ourselves and we ask ourselves every single day. Because that's the only way we're going to grow. And every single one of us needs to grow in our faith.
Yes.
You can't ever have the most faith ever possible. No. Every single day, we should be growing. We should be believing God for something.
Yeah.
And we should be checking to make sure we're doing that.
Right.
So that's all I have for you tonight. But thank you guys so much for being here on a Wednesday night. I'm always